have this theory that every Marvel movie has 5 big fight scenes, each one bigger than the last. In other superhero iterations, 1, maybe 2 big fight scenes used to suffice, but since the Avengers squad came along, now you have to have 5.
Avengers!
Spider-Man No Way Home is no exception. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this is actually by far my favorite Marvel film ever. And I know for a fact that not everyone is gonna agree, even at this early stage. I'm going to be in the minority. And I think a lot of folks are going to find this film slow. And for all the reasons that they'll find it slow and boring, I loved it. By the way, I'm Diane, and I'm finally putting my master's in film theory to use. If you like that, leave a like, a comment, maybe subscribe, or risk my wrath.
It's really not her wrath you should fear.
Okay, so as for spoilers, some of you were asking, am I going to do them or not? I'm going to be talking about the film in a roundabout way that doesn't exactly spoil things, just talks about what occurs, if that makes sense. Okay, so the irony is that in 2021, a human equipped with the advanced tech some of our guys have, an amalgamation with, I was in a science experiment gone awry and now I'm a wonderful genetic mutation, types would probably mean much less hand-to-hand combat and much more... Okay, can we blow up his home?
Address, please.
Yeah, it's 155 Sycamore Street, America Road.
It is done.
Super. That is smart warfare, but that is also a sucky, boring film, so that doesn't happen. I'm going to put out a controversial opinion that's going to rival the one that I had about American biscuits being the same as European scones, and that is that the fight scenes are my very least favourite part of Marvel films. A little switch goes off in my brain that says, you are now watching very, very loud CGI renderings of your favourite characters. Oh, here's another, and another, and another, and the penultimate one that you think is the last one, but it's not, and then comes the last fight. And each one is louder than the last. Has anyone else noticed this rule of 5s? I even wrote down on my hand that there were 5 scenes, like I made little notes as the film was going on, but then I washed my hand, so you can't really see it that well now. I way prefer the character development scenes and the ones where the hero and the villain look each other in the eye and have a witty exchange of words, a repartee if you will. Maybe I'm the only person in the world who wanted another character origin story for Spider-Man from our Tom Holland. What can I say? I also love rereading the old comic books over and over again, despite knowing exactly how the story is going to pan out. Anyway, my point is, while this film brings a whole lot of pow-pow, it's also got a lot of heart, kid. I knew nothing but the 2 trailers that I watched on this channel and made sure to get across to the cinema immediately upon opening so it didn't get spoiled for me. I just got in the door, like literally just got in the door. And I haven't been to the cinema since like 2019, so it was quite the experience. If you want to know more about that, check out my Patreon channel. So there is one thing that's kind of spoilery, but honestly, I think everybody in the world knew about it except me, and even then I kind of had a hunch when I watched the trailer. So I think you'll probably know if you know anything about the Spider-Man. It was the much publicized thing that they talked about. Like everyone knew about it. But I didn't know for sure. If you absolutely don't know this really popular thing that happens in the film, maybe don't watch the rest of this. There are 3 Spider-Mans in this movie. Oh my god, I had no idea until I saw the trailer about the multiverse thing and mind blown. Success story there, Marvel. I remember how disappointed I was upon hearing the news that there was a whole battle about intellectual property and that potentially we were never going to get another version of this Spider-Man. I actually really liked Andrew Garfield's one, and I was disappointed that we didn't get the final film that was set up in that universe. And so, the story goes that the big heads of the cinema studios are at loggerheads and have basically accepted they were never going to get to make another Spider-Man in this universe. Then Tom Holland gets on the phone to the head of the opposing studio and has a sincere conversation, thus saving the Marvel universe. It's like a really tiny, real-world version of Spider-Man saving the world. In fact, to be honest, I have more than a wee hunch that this was a cleverly orchestrated marketing ploy. Bravo to the PR team for building hype. Did this conversation actually happen like they said? Call me a skeptic, but I don't think so. If it did, well, I fancy Tom Holland a little bit more now. By the way, it's worth noting that the actor has definitely gone from boy to man in this film. Yeah, Tom was like 20 in the first Spider-Man film, but he passed for the 16-year-old kid he was playing. Many would argue better than the actors who had played the pinnacle role before him. But in this film, while he was still supposed to be playing a school-age Spider-Man, we are more into Grease territory, whereby an adult is playing a high school kid, and therefore, it's okay for me to fancy him. He's 25 now, okay? He's got his man chin. It's very apparent that all of the actors are just that little bit older, but I'm very okay with it. It really doesn't take away from the film for me. Okay, so the first thing I have to commend the film on, epic use of POV and non-stabilization. The non-stabilization thing might have been a cinematic effect, but it just worked really well. It'll definitely please those who enjoy the video games and comic strip stylings of the Marvel films. I particularly enjoy when the Marvel films amalgamate practical effects with CGI special effects. Yes, it's predominantly green screen throughout the film, but the fact that, for example, Tom Holland is an expert gymnast in real life definitely translates to the final product. What really pleased me about this film was that the story was definitely put at the foremost. The psychology of the characters was the main thing. They also brought in some real-world ramifications. For example, if Peter Parker was found to be Spider-Man, they put child endangerment on the table. Poor Aunt May was accused of child endangerment. There's even a small cameo from a lawyer-type person. Obviously, bringing in the multiverse seems to throw up the idea that the story is going to be especially complicated, but actually, the superficial story in itself was surprisingly simple. Will the uber Spider-Man nerd appreciate the film on multiple levels? Absolutely. However, you could go into it knowing pretty much nothing about Spider-Man and enjoy it too. It is always fun to nerd out and know the inside jokes though. Another thing I enjoy about the Marvel films in particular is that they keep up with the contemporary subjects where the comic books are obviously based in the past. It would be tempting to only pay homage to the core story as it exists, but Marvel does a great job by including things like Bluetooth technology and things like that. It's 2021, and this is Spider-Man in 2021. Well, they don't mention the pandemic, but honestly, we need an escape. The villains' entrances are epic. In contrast, the heroes' entrances are remarkably underwhelming, which I'm absolutely not saying is, I think, a bad thing. In fact, I think it works really well for the character of Peter Parker. He doesn't create a big song and dance when he enters a room. There was, for me, a terrible moment where I thought they had brought back the character villains, but not the actual actors to play them. And that's very plausible that they could create the CGI villains and not bring back the actors, but thank God they did. They brought back all of the actors. And oh my God, the actors did an amazing job. Okay, here's what I didn't love. The Daily Bugle scenes are just bizarre. No hate to the actor involved, but the way they present them just takes you right out of the film, for me anyway. They just don't mesh well with the rest of the film, which seems to be about as authentic as a superhero movie could be to the real world and how things happened. The Daily Bugle scenes, in contrast, just seem hammy and they just don't vibe. They were overlit, overscripted, and as a person who's done a tiny bit of live TV, they absolutely did not feel like live news broadcasts. The other tiny little part that I didn't love, and perhaps this is my fault, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I felt like the film got a little bit, this is a metaphor for life and a life lesson. When one of the characters talked about sending the people from the other universe back to where they came from, to which another character replies, is that better for them, or is it more convenient for us?
Whoa, that is deep.
It definitely seemed like some kind of social commentary on immigration or refugees or something, which is a totally valid conversation to have, but I just didn't appreciate it in my superhero film. Again, maybe I'm overthinking and they didn't mean that, but it just felt a tiny bit preachy. But that was it. Those were the only two things I did not love about the film. With Tom Holland at the helm as Peter Parker, it was already onto a winner, as he's pretty much my most authentic Peter Parker Spider-Man. I think a lot of people agree that Tobey Maguire was an excellent Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield was a great Peter Parker, but Tom Holland really sells it as both. In fact, he's the only one I really see Peter Parker, the character, in when he's in his Spidey suit. This film brought that human element to the other two Spider-Men really well. The film did an amazing job of bringing us the two other Spider-Man where they are, having aged in the universe, and as a result they're almost mentors to Tom Holland. Tom Holland's Peter Parker, but it never becomes saccharine. Just as the Avengers brought in real-world questions of what the heck happens when all those buildings are destroyed by superheroes in the real world, this film brings up the question of, well, what happens to Peter Parker after the Spider-Man films end? And that's not an easy one-line answer. The film does an amazing job of showing you how complex this answer is and highlighting the differences between the three Peters. They are the same characters, but they've had very different experiences. This is highlighted by their favourite places to be: the Chrysler Building, the Empire State Building, and school. Also, Tom Holland's Spider-Man points out he's the only one of the three who actually knows how to work as part of a team, having been in the Avengers. The other two Spider-Men don't even know what the Avengers is, and I won't spoil it for you, but there is an amazing, deep, meaningful conversation between the Spider-Men and the Peter Parkers. It's an awesome, quiet moment that actually tells us so much about the character themselves. That works. And it was actually Garfield's Spider-Man who gave me the ultimate lump in the throat moment. Well, there's two lump in the throat moments. One is foreshadowed really well and I did not see it coming. Oh my god, that's all I'm going to say about it. For me, the standout actors, aside from the leads, are Jacob Batalon as Ned, who provides some brilliant comic relief. A very underrated actor. I hope Hollywood actually gives him a chance. And Willem Dafoe is just unrivaled. You will absolutely hate him and then love him and then hate him and then love him and hate him and back and forth and flip-flop. He's not considered to be one of the greats for no reason. But everyone in this film does an amazing job. Zendaya, Marissa Tomei, Tony Revolori. There really is no weakling here, and that's where, especially in a Marvel film, novelty casting can run amok sometimes. Apparently, every film reviewer needs a rating scale, so I'm going to harp back to my videos of old and bring back the 5 Guinnesses. And I'm going to give this one 5 Guinnesses out of 5 Guinnesses. So yes, I would suggest you go out to the cinema and see this. Unless, of course, you want to wait like next week or maybe the week after when the crowds die down a little. Introverts Anonymous, I hate people.
Me too.
And that's it for today. See you on the other side. Bye. Next door, moving furniture. I'm very sorry. They're moving furniture and they're having a rave. They're usually very quiet, but as soon as I switch on the camera, they just do a lot of moving things. It would be tempting to only pay homage to the core. It would be tempting to only pay homage to the core sub. It would be tempting to only. So that made me very happy. On another note, happy is less happy in this film, but anyway.